If you're familiar with Sichuanese food, you're probably familiar with Laziji, Sichuan spicy chicken. It's one of those dishes that's basically like synonymous with heat. In a proper Chongqing version, there's like more dried chilies than there is chicken. But today, we wanted to introduce you to a dish from the neighboring Guizhou province, also called Laziji. Same name, same climb up to the dizzying heights of the Scoville scale, but it's interestingly got a decidedly different cooking method. This chicken is braised, and so along with the familiar hiccup-inducing heat, it's also obviously got that whole melt-in-your-mouth thing going on. So, right. To get started then with Guizhou Laziji, we'll need Guizhou chili paste. This stuff is called ciba, pounded chili, and it's fundamental to a number of Guizhou dishes. I would bet serious money that ciba would be impossible to buy outside China though, so be sure to check out our recipe here if you want to whip up a big batch the proper way. That said, I always feel a twang of guilt giving you guys a recipe that, in turn, relies on another multi-day project of a recipe like ciba chili paste. So today, I'll start off by showing you a quicker, less intense version, which you do sometimes see in many Guizhou kitchens. So, traditionally, ciba uses a mix of 3 parts huaxi chilies, which clock in at around 20k SVU and have a great color, and 2 parts zunyi xiaomila, which are closely related to and roughly as hot as Thai bird's eye, so quite spicy. But before you pull your hair out frantically trying to find those specific chilies, know that the logic of why they're used is vastly more important than the cultivars themselves. I didn't feel like sourcing Guizhou chilies for this one, so for color I used 40 grams of Sichuan Argentao chilies, but feel free to go with anything that's a medium heat and suitably red. Arbols or cayennes should work just fine. Then for heat, I used 25 grams of Sichuan Heaven Facing, but you could totally use Thai bird's eye, African piri piri, or maybe Tianjin. But feel free to get creative here. Want to make a Guizhou chili paste with Kashmiri chilies and Carolina Reapers? I mean, why not? I'm curious too. But however you decide, just reconstitute your chilies with hot boiled water and cover. Let them soak until soft, at least 1 hour, but overnight would be totally fine too. After that time, take out the chilies and wring out a touch of the excess water. You don't need to go too nuts here because we do want some of the moisture. Then, to help those get started, first give the chilies a rough slice. Then toss those in a mortar along with 3 cloves of roughly chopped garlic and an inch of smashed ginger. And then just settle in and start pounding. If you've got a food processor, feel free to do this in there too. It'll definitely save some sweat because this can be a bit of a chore. After about 15 minutes of pounding, we're looking at some chilies that are mostly broken down but still having some flakes is completely normal. Now at this point, if we were making a proper batch of ciba chili paste, we'd fry this stuff in spiced oil and leave it out to ferment a couple days. But I promise that using this stuff will get you 90% there for this dish. Now for the chicken. Yes, this is one of those Chinese poultry on the bone dishes, which I know can be a contentious subject. I'm an enormous proponent of chicken on the bone, so I'll be using a 1.25 kilo bird cleaved across the bone. That said, if that prospect does seem daunting to you, our recommendation would be to use chicken wings. It'd retain the same essence and, who doesn't love a braised chicken wing? If you'd like, you can also take your wings and cleave them in half to get even closer to the Chinese style, but I tested this with whole wings too and it's also quite tasty. But either way, there's no need to actually marinate this, we can fry directly. So we'll be frying this chicken in about 2 cups of oil in 2 separate batches. Here we're using Chinese caiziao, which is a virgin rapeseed oil that's classic to the Chinese Southwest, but peanut oil would also work just fine. So over max flame, get the oil up to a blistering 200 centigrade and drop in your batch of chicken. Now, as you can probably tell, we're really starting to flirt with crowding this thing. You can absolutely opt instead for a more proper deep fry with a more proper oil quantity, but we'll be using this frying oil as the base of our braise, thus the 2 cups. And because we will be braising this in the end, there's really no need to be too paranoid here. Just get the chicken good and golden brown, which is about 5 or 6 minutes on our stove for each batch. And with all our chicken fried, we can braise. So at this point, evaluate your oil. You want there to be about a cup and a half of oil remaining. It's going to feel like a lot of oil, but trust that you have to start with a solid amount to get a properly red base. You can always dip some out later on in the cooking process. So then over a medium flame, get the oil up until it's bubbling around a pair of chopsticks. Now toss in 2 inches of smashed ginger and 1 head's worth of garlic cloves. Fry those until fragrant, about a minute, then swap the flame to low. Now go in with your chili paste. We ended up yielding 175 grams in all, by the way. The low heat's needed to make sure that the chilies don't scorch. Stir and fry until the oil itself's changed color, or about 3 minutes. Then go in with an optional but recommended 3 tablespoons of Pixian doubanjiang, chili bean paste. See, if you're using more complex ciba, You really don't need that chili bean paste. But using the kind of quick paste we made today, we really would suggest it. Now fry that for another couple minutes, and at this point your base should be obviously stained. Then go in with your chicken, give it a good mix to coat with the red oil, and add in a half a liter of water. We're working in a ratio of 1 part oil to 2 parts water. Then swap the flame to high, bring to a boil, turn your flame to the lowest heat your stove will go, and cover. Quick note though, that these sorts of wok lids aren't exactly airtight and still allow for reduction. So if you're working with a heavier lid, make sure to leave a sizable crack. We'll want the liquid to be about 90% reduced, which does take a while, so crack open a beer, relax, and check on the guy periodically. 90 minutes later, this is what we're looking at. At this point, if you're finding things a bit too oily, feel free to scoop out a bit. It makes for a great chili oil substitute. And if things are looking watery, you can uncover and swap the flame to high to finish the reduction. We were looking good though, so then season with 2 teaspoons sugar and 1 teaspoon MSG. No skipping the MSG this time, it is important to balance the spice. Then go in with 3 sprigs of green garlic cut into 1.5-inch sections. White portions first because they take a little longer to cook, so give that a 1-minute mix, and then drop in the green parts. If you can't source green garlic, by the way, feel free to sub that for scallion. Quick mix, heat off, and out. Guizhou Laziji, done.
So in Guiyang, for this kind of meat stew dishes, besides eating it straight out like this, there's another way of eating it, which is called gan guo, dry pot. What you do is that you basically finish eating all the meat, and then you put some broth in, and you add some vegetables, mushrooms, tofu, and turn it into a hot pot kind of dish, which is really delicious. And my favorite is the one that you put in the tomato broth and turn it into like a tomato chicken hot pot. It's really awesome. Right, so check out the link in the description box for detailed recipe. A big thank you for everyone that's supporting us on Patreon. And of course, subscribe for more Chinese cooking videos.